Hi, Armand here with the Integral Astrology forecast for July 2018. This one should come with a warning label because it is a very, very hot month. I don't care if you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. The aspects are going to keep us warm this month. We start on July 5th with a station of Chiron in Aries. Now with Mars, the ruler of Aries, already retrograde, retrograde the whole summer. With Mars already retrograde, we're feeling the ability to assert ourselves and go forward a little hampered. It's more inward time. And now Chiron in Aries is just got there a couple of months ago, and he's stopping to retrograde. It's a time when we might really be questioning who we are as individuals, our ability to assert ourselves in our unique path versus the pressure to conform. And with the South Node coming to the beginning of Aquarius and the North Node of the Moon at the beginning of Leo and being activated by, among other things, Mars retrograde, we're very much feeling this as a theme for the summer. Being yourself, following your heart versus succumbing to the pressures of society, friends, the little voice in your head that says, well, you know, that type of thing. Now, if Chiron is stationing on July 5th, at the same time Mercury is opposite Mars. This is an opportunity to express yourself. This is an opportunity to say what you feel. But a lot of folks feeling that kind of woundedness, feeling that kind of being hemmed in, are liable to sort of lash out. In other words, watch for people who kind of feel a little bit bad about things, getting a little bit testy right around July 5th. Well, 4th, 5th, 6th, that type of area. You know, it's just a time when people are going to be projecting their own frustrations onto others. That sort of continues through the 9th when Mercury goes on to square Jupiter. So you can, again, look at that time from the 4th through the 9th as being a time when people are going to be saying an awful lot. And you know, it's good if you're going hard on somebody else. Make sure that you really have it in for them, and it's not just your own personal stuff that you're projecting out. Somebody throws stuff onto you, you also kind of remember that, okay, this is maybe more about them than it is about me. On July 10th, Jupiter stations to go direct. That's pretty good. Jupiter stations usually make us feel pretty good. It's going to pop up that Mercury aspect, though. So the 9th, 10th, 11th, when Jupiter is stationing and Mercury is in there, here we might have a real sense of, like, I gotta say what I gotta say. I'm gonna let it all spill out. So, you know, it would be good if you had something nice to say. It would be good if you had something positive to say. Great time to get a positive message across. We have an eclipse on July 12th. You see, it's rapid fire. Here it comes. July 12th, we have an eclipse. This is a solar eclipse, and it is directly opposite Pluto. So even though it's a solar eclipse, a new moon, usually a sort of implosive energy, it's opposite Pluto, which sort of makes it an opposition as a more explosive aspect. So while solar eclipses take a long time to work themselves out, this one is liable to have some pretty significant stuff pretty obviously attached to it. And so we may see stuff, particularly in the world, particularly out there on the world stage, the collective, what's going on in politics and social stuff. We're liable to see an awful lot happening right around the 12th. It will take a long time to really know what it all means, though. That's part of the eclipse energy. We have Mercury. Well, we don't really have a lot of downtime between then and the next thing, which is Mercury stationing to retrograde on the 26th, just before the lunar eclipse on the 27th. This lunar eclipse is at the lunar eclipse, the moon is tightly conjunct Mars, and just as the solar eclipse got extra power by being opposite Pluto, the lunar eclipse is getting extra power by being associated with retrograde Mars. Here we have an explosive, an outward-going energy of an eclipse, a lunar eclipse. It's a full moon, which is always a time of things coming to light. It's a time of lunacy. It's a time of emotional reactivity. And it's conjunct Mars, which is retrograde, which is pulling that energy inwards. And again, we have that same dynamic. You pull your energy inwards, you have the internal struggle, and then you project it outwards. So, you know, in our interactions with others, most typically on any day, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, a lot of what we're doing is projecting our own stuff onto them. When we have these eclipses that are really dramatizing that, the thing is that we're doing that, but it's very, very hard to have any sort of sense of control, intellectually, emotionally, or otherwise. We just take it in and project it out on an almost automatic, very typically unconscious process. Which means it's good to know when those dates are coming up, this is a time when you are likely to be a little bit reactive, and others are very likely to be reactive as well. The very fact that Mercury is retrograde a day before, stations to retrograde a day before, well, that really suggests to me that we're liable to fly off the handle at the lunar eclipse based on misinformation. In other words, you hear something, you misinterpret something, you read a word wrong, and you kind of freak out, and it turns out that you're not really even working on the right information. So double check your information. Of course, Mercury stations in general, right there around the 24th, 25th, this is a time when those mercurial snafus tend to multiply. We get some of the most dramatic effects of Mercury retrograde right around that time. So the 24th, 25th, 26th. And with the Sun square Uranus at the same time, again, the potential for reactivity is huge. The potential for flying off the handle quickly is huge. So we have the Sun square Uranus, we have Mercury station to retrograde, and we have a full moon eclipse opposite Mars or conjunct Mars on the 27th. We have a really hot period of time. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, what else could happen? And the answer is, as we approach August 1st, retrograde Mars is going to be square to Uranus. And that is going to resonate with the time in, let's say, mid-May, when Uranus went into Taurus and was quickly squared by Mars, also in Aquarius. So we're kind of rehashing that time. So if you look back to May, if you have any memory for things at this point in time, and you look back to May, you're very likely to see what's going on. You'll be revisiting the same issues or similar issues, although it may take until sometime pretty deep into September before you get an actual resolution. But some of those issues that were hot in mid-May are liable to be heated up again. Well, now, those are the major events of, those are among the major events of July 2018. Let me point out that around July 23rd, Mars will be conjunct the south node of the moon. This is a time which is very likely to be pulling us back into the past. It's very hard to go forward when Mars retrograde is conjunct the south node of the moon. People will be getting up in their ideological stuff very much. It's a time when people are very likely to be sort of pushing at each other on an ideological basis. When Mars went direct over the south node was around June 9th, 10th, 11th, around that area. That was the G7 summit. That was Trump meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore. So what we'll be looking at is probably a revisit of some of those issues. Not that they've entirely gone away, but that we'll probably get a little next chapter of those things. But in our personal lives as well, if you look to what was happening in early June, you kind of get a revisit, and we're going back in to process again and bring things up. And again, the challenge for this summer is largely, am I being my individual self? Am I doing my own thing? Or am I kind of constrained by society, by friends, by little voices that are sort of hampering me? Or sometimes there's actually an actual loud voice yelling at you. In terms of relationship stuff, you'll probably pick up I know you'll pick up many more things by watching the Relationship and Astrology YouTube channel, where my colleague Margaret and I do weekly forecasts. But a quick little heads up over here. On July 9th, Venus goes into Virgo. It's not exactly party over, but it's not the party sort of atmosphere that we had with Venus in Leo through the early part of the month and through part of June. Not that we're necessarily feeling like partying all that much. On the 11th, Venus goes on to trine Uranus in Taurus. This is the first time we're really going to be seeing that aspect for a while, and we'll be looking at it for another 7 years. It suggests trying something new. It suggests breaking out of the box a little bit. It suggests, it might be a time for, to try somebody new, or to do something a little bit different. Venus is in Virgo, so it's probably going to be a little constrained, but, you try a nice organic restaurant or something like that. On the 14th, Venus goes on to trine Saturn, and now this is a time to build structure in relationships, and that's helpful. It's also perhaps a time to let go of things that aren't working. Maybe that Uranus aspect gives you a sense of, hey, something new could be going on, and so maybe when we get to Saturn, we sort of release a little bit. On the 22nd, then Venus will be sextile to Jupiter. Venus, Jupiter, they get along well. They're not particularly happy in the signs that they're in. But, it's a nice opportunity. I would say something like, sort of mellow, within limits, nice organic dinner or something like that. It's a good energy. It's not over the top, but it's a good energy. And on July 24th, Venus goes on to oppose Neptune. Good for, let's call it fantasy, good for romance, good for a, nice sense of possibility. Although also Venus in Virgo could pick out some little fact and blow it out of proportion, either making something seem great or maybe finding a little too much fault with someone. And on the 27th, Venus goes on to trine Pluto. And here, relationships that have been under stress and, again, Uranus, Saturn, and now Pluto. Well, if it's time to let go, it's time to let go. And that's something that some folks will be doing. On the other hand, if it's time to go deeper, it is a good time to go deeper as well. That's what's going on in terms of relationships this month, and it looks to be kind of a time when in general you're going to sort through the facts, maybe experiment a little bit, maybe try some stuff out, and then come to a conclusion about where you are and what you want to do. So, Venus may be in Virgo, but it's very active. It's a very active time. It's a time of making some decisions in terms of relationships. Well, there you have it. Mercury retrograde, Jupiter turning direct, Chiron stationing to retrograde, Mars approaching a square to Uranus, Venus active all month long. But look, I got through that in about 13 minutes. As I said, it's going to take a long time to unpack this, and what we mostly have to be aware of is there's a lot happening this month. There's a lot of changes, and don't freak out, but don't sit still either. To say that there's a lot going on and we might be a little too reactive doesn't suggest that we should do nothing. You don't want to be the deer in the headlights either. You don't want to be the truck barreling down on the deer, but you don't want to be the deer in the headlights either. If it's time to move, if it's time to do something different, if it's time to make changes in your life, and you feel the pressure and there's nothing else, then go. And if it's things that you've been contemplating for a while and the pressures have gotten too strong for you to resist, then it's time to go. So, some of this stuff acts as motivation as much as it acts as an opportunity for reaction. So you have to be aware that others are going to be having some challenges, and you're going to be having some challenges, but some of these things are really opportunities for change. And if we weren't pushed, we probably would just sit where we were a lot of the time. All right, 14 minutes and 12 seconds in, I'm saying that's enough for July of 2018.